Hello, everybody. I'm here with, well, I guess if you wanted to pick an American, this is an American. He's been serving our country for over 38 years as a congressman on Long Island. So if you want to talk about a Long Islander for Long Island, you're looking at him right now, Congressman Peter King. The only negative regret I have about talking with him today is I understand that this is his last term, and he's the kind of guy we want on our side, looking after us. So he was gracious enough to spend some time with us. It's been busy for everybody, and I thought he'd give us an insight of what his thoughts were of how we can, from a administrative standpoint, fight this battle. Thank you, Congressman.
Doctor, thank you. And let me thank you for the great work you're doing, St. Francis is doing, and really all the hospitals on Long Island during this, during this pandemic. It's just outstanding. Also, I've only been in Congress 28 years. Don't make me too old. I'm old enough as it is, but 28 years, 28 great years, no complaints whatsoever. Now, as far as what's going on, since March 14th, I guess I've been home, back in the district. We actually evacuated from Washington. And then I did go back one day on March 27th. We had a vote on the emergency legislation, but basically I've been back here in the district. I've been in my home since March 18th is when we actually even had to leave my district office when the governor started ordering the shutdown. But in many ways, there's more work going on now than when I was in Washington or in my district office, because we're answering every phone call that comes in. The calls get slotted out to different people on the staff, depending on what their expertise is. But to be honest with you, most of the calls coming in are a result of the pandemic. A lot of calls on unemployment compensation, a lot of calls on small business loans, and just general questions about when is this going to be over. And obviously, I have no idea when it's going to be over. The government, I think the government, considering that we never have really, nobody in our lifetime has ever seen something like this. And I think that once we got going, which would have been probably in early March, the federal government, the state government, and the Governor Cuomo, give him credit, here in Nassau County, Laura Curran as the county executive, and the hospitals, everyone has stepped up, and they've had to really learn it as they go along. And I think they've learned very quickly. And even though I think that right now Nassau County has more deaths than the entire state of California. And I guess that results from New York City and other reasons. All that will be part of an after-action report. But from everything I've heard, everyone I've spoken to, the hospital care, the medical care has been outstanding. And how the hospitals were able to manage and cope with this just mass numbers of people coming in with an illness which really is different from any other virus you had before. So it's
You're right on target with that, Congressman. Something interesting that just came into my mind, and I wonder if you could comment on this. I saw an article in the paper around a week ago saying that everybody's filled with these COVID patients, and we're not seeing heart patients or patients with GI bleeds or COPD. What happened to all those patients? And the reality is they're afraid to come to the hospital and they're sick, and they're still there. I just noticed, every day that we turn on the TV, all we see is daily reports from the reporters and politicians talking about COVID. And to make an analogy that someone made with hospitals and what happened to everything else, what's happening with the rest of government? I mean, all we're doing is talking about COVID. What's happening to all the things you guys do 365 days a year? Yeah. What's happening with that? And how are things going with the rest of things that you deal with?
Well, as far as foreign policy is concerned, that's really going on the way it always has. State Department, Defense Department, CIA, the intelligence community are all doing what they've done. As far as here at home, quite frankly, what we're doing is not just dealing with the virus per se, but also to make sure that the economy doesn't collapse. I mean, we are going to be in tough shape. Like, for instance, Nassau County gets so much of its revenue from sales tax. Well, there's almost no sales tax coming in. Going to be for half of March, probably all of April, God knows how far into May. So we're trying to find ways to keep the economy going, keep government solvent, keep small businesses alive, and to really keep people from suffering more than they have to. And what I find with this is that soon we have to make a decision that we can't stay in a lockdown forever. On the other hand, you can't come out too early and cause the epidemic to start over again. But there could be a time where a prudential judgment has to be made. Could more people have health issues or even die because of the lockdown than because of the coronavirus. So it is a certain stage. I mean, you would probably know more than me, but there's some kind of formula as to how many suicides for every point of unemployment, how many people just getting an annual checkup. I mean, think of all the people who are diagnosed with breast cancer, prostate cancer, diabetes, blood pressure, most of which have no early symptoms. And it's found out in the annual physical, or maybe a person just gets a headache, they think it's nothing, and they go and they find out it's something serious. No one's going to go to an emergency room now with a headache.
You're right. And, I was telling my wife the other day, it's sort of like setting cardiology back 30, 40 years when I was an intern. We saw a lot of people who've had heart attacks at home and heart failure, and they weren't taken care of. We don't see that anymore because people are taken care of. But if they're home, you bring up a great point. They're not getting taken care of. And I don't think there will be a right answer. I think whenever the economy gets restarted, whether it's May 15th or whatever date it is, people will always second guess because there will be some disease going afterwards. But you bring up a point, we need to get the economy going again. There's no question. But where is all the money coming from? I mean, we talk about all this amount of money that the federal government's giving and the state government. It wasn't there before. We were in debt before. Where in the world are we going to get this money from?
To be honest with you, it's being printed. We have to pass it in Congress, and then and we're going further into debt. There's no doubt we're going to be adding trillions of dollars onto our debt. And but there's really no choice. Just like at the beginning of World War II, there was no choice. The country was in depression, but they still had to spend the money. And we're going to have to make spending cuts as we go along. We're going to have to hope that the economy recharges itself at such a level that more revenues will come in to help offset that. But it's going to be tough. We're going to have. The virus is tough enough. That's the toughest thing we have to do. But after that, it's not going to be a walk in the park. It's going to be tough to get us back and strong and healthy, not just physically, but also mentally and also economically.
Now, what committee are you in charge of right now?
I've been on the Homeland Security Committee since it started back in 2003. We started the Homeland Security Committee. I was chairman or ranking member for about 9 years, and we have a term limit as to how long you can be there. But I am what's called a ranking member on the subcommittee on emergency preparedness. So we've had a number of hearings prior to March 10th. We had a number of hearings on the pandemic. And I remember we had a hearing on March 10th, and we had a number of medical experts in. And at that time, I just gotten notified that as of that morning, there were 140 cases in New York State. And we couldn't believe it was that high. And that was only 5 weeks ago, 140, and everyone was shocked when that number came in. And I think we had really a handful of deaths. I mean, every death is vital, but it was a small number. And certainly nobody I was speaking to expected something of this magnitude, the way it, I remember we had Dr. Gottlieb was in speaking to us, I guess it was on also earlier that day on March 10th. And he was saying that, things can be so bad that a city like Seattle someday may have to be shut down. I'm thinking, oh God, how can you shut a whole city down? Never knowing that as a practical matter, the whole country has been shut down now in less than 5 weeks.
So you're the ranking member in Homeland Security, and I'm sure you have a lot of people in intelligence things. I don't know if you could even talk about it, but is it something where we know the origins of this, the reality of it, or is that still being looked into?
All I can say is it's still being looked into, and this is not something I've learned from the committee, just from my own talking with people. It seems more likely now than it did maybe a few weeks ago that this could have originated in a lab in China, probably accidentally if it did happen, but there's just more evidence leaning that way. Now, I don't want to rush to judgment because, again, this is really almost a case of first impression. But right now, I say there's more talk of that and more indicators of that now than there were, let's say, a week or two. One thing I should say that we're doing is that Congresswoman Mikey Sherrill from New York, she was just elected last year. She's a Navy veteran. And she and I have just, as of the last few days, we formed a new task force basically on how we're going to get out of this, how we're going to bring the economy back, bring the country back, and also, though, how we prepare in the future so this doesn't happen. I think we have to make an effort to all we can to bring our industrial base, certainly as far as pharmaceuticals and medical supplies, back from China. I mean, we are now almost at the mercy of China. They stop producing gowns, we have no gowns. If they stop producing masks, we have no masks. It's a practical matter, no masks. And the pharmaceuticals, anywhere from, I've heard numbers anywhere from 55 to 95% of pharmaceuticals come from China or have some base in China. We can't put ourselves in that position again. Also, we have to, in preparing for it, work out, have it coordinated between the federal government, the state government, the county government, and also hospitals as to how much inventory we're going to stockpile. How many ventilators do we have to be safe going to it, on gowns and masks and all sorts of medical supplies. That has to be better coordinated in the future. I remember reading that New York City back in 2006 started a whole program to have a large stockpiling of equipment for the inventory, and in case of a pandemic. And within 2 years, they sold the ventilators they bought because they were too expensive to maintain. And the oxygen masks, I guess, went dead, for lack of a better term. And so that's what happened to their inventory. I guess no one thought this was going to happen. And I think if you're, I'm not even judging anyone, because with how tight government budgets have been, and if you said to someone, well, we're spending tens and tens of millions of dollars in case a pandemic comes. Well, when was the last pandemic? 100 years ago. What are you wasting the money for? Nobody, and again, now we realize we have to assume there could be a pandemic, and we should be in a better position going forward. So it's also better coordinated. So the state and the county know how much they have, how much the hospitals have, how that can be moved around, how quickly. And also, obviously, with testing, we have to increase various types of testing, including and things I know nothing about. I don't pretend to be a doctor or a scientist as far as antibodies, serial testing, all of that. Just, again, that has to be improved and has to be developed. And a vaccine, of course.
Not an easy job that you're facing. And well, you've done a great job representing our country. And I can't thank you enough for taking the time today. You're really quite informative. And I wish you health. And I hope your retirement is everything you want it to be. But you're a great guy. Thank you for coming.
Doctor, thank you very much. I really appreciate it. Thank you.